Let's bring in NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung, NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba, and Ravi Agrawal, editor-in-chief of Foreign Policy magazine. And Brian, I want to start with you. So where are the highest tariffs now, and how are Americans feeling about all of this?
Yeah, some tariff rates as high as 40 or 50%. And again, I think when we talk about the tariffs, a lot of people are probably thinking, Brian, wait, we've talked about tariffs seemingly every day over the last 6 months. Why should we take today any more seriously than the prior months? And it is because the president and the White House have engaged other countries. And in some cases, even though there's been these so-called deals, the walkaway tariff rate that was now effective is substantially higher than it was when the president entered office on January 20th. So for that reason, these tariffs that went into effect on midnight are going to lead to higher consumer prices. And I think that the concern among consumers over rising costs is underscored by recent survey data that we got from our partners over at CNBC, showing a majority, it is a slim majority, but a majority of Americans disapproving of the president's approach here on tariffs. But again, 53% rating the president as a disapproval on this, 51% specifically on tariffs. And again, you can see how much higher those numbers are with concerns over inflation and costs of living, 60% disapproving of the president's policies.
And Monica, the president's declaring it a massive victory. But this isn't even the end of his tariff moves, right?
Exactly, Anna. There are still a couple of countries that are on separate tracks for negotiations, some of which got extensions. And then there's the nitty-gritty of some of the frameworks that were reached. With the EU, for instance, there are still some questions about exactly how some of those points in the deal are going to work. And then you have these specific industry tariffs, the ones that are going to be on things like pharmaceuticals that could go up to 250%, the president said and indicated. And you also have semiconductors, which the president said will face a 100% tariff for those who make those really important chips that go into about everything that we use technologically. But there are some important carve-outs, and that is for any companies who are pledging to do that kind of manufacturing and producing here in the United States. And that is why you saw this major announcement yesterday that the president participated in with Apple and with Tim Cook by his side, touting and saying that those companies who have pledged to do that won't face these kinds of tariffs, but others will. And that is why you're going to see in the White House's argument a boom in domestic manufacturing. They're trying to argue that that could make up for some of these issues here where the economy will face these unknown questions from these really high tariffs in some instances on things that we do use every day as well. So the White House trying to really take a victory lap. The president saying this is what he promised to do and he's going through with it. But at the same time, there are still other deals in other countries that haven't been finalized, Anna.
And Ravi, as we look at that list of the countries and all the products that are going to be impacted here, the president has hit friends and foes alike. How is this impacting relationships with our allies?
Oh, not very well at all. I think, there are countries in Europe, for example, which feel stymied, surprised, befuddled. Think of a country like India, which has strengthened its relations with the United States over the last 20 years. India is absolutely stunned that it's been hit with reciprocal tariffs on the oil that it's purchasing from Russia, which it feels the Biden administration allowed it to do. There was broad understanding that if India didn't buy oil from Russia, oil prices would just go up because it would buy it from elsewhere. So there's general and genuine confused attitudes among world leaders I'm speaking with and diplomats around the world who don't understand how, if Trump cares so much about inflation, he doesn't see that, A, this will have an inflationary regressive impact domestically, but B, also on the global prices of oil. So it's confusing, to say the least.
Yeah, Ravi, just picking up on your mention of India and those tariffs that are multiplying on India because of their trading relationship with Russia. I mean, why target India and not impose similar tariffs on China for buying Russian goods? We know Beijing buys a lot more Russian oil than New Delhi does.
Yeah, no one knows the answer. I've been asking people in the Trump administration. I can just say I was in India and China both over the last couple of weeks, and they're all just very, very confused. They don't understand the logic or the rationale behind this. Look, China does already have high tariffs on it. The Indian approach to this is that they honestly think Trump might just tackle in the next couple of weeks. So they're not trying to do anything. India is continuing to purchase Russian oil. And remember, again, Russia contributes a significant amount of global oil production. Were it to come off the market, crude prices could go up dramatically by an order of 30, 40%. That would immediately lead to oil prices, the price of the pump at home in the United States, to really spiral. Trump likes to say a gallon costs less than $2, which it doesn't. But if it did, it would spiral upwards.
I've definitely noticed that prices are starting to actually go up at the gas stations around my house. Monica, the president this week has also been toying with this idea of tariff rebates. How would that work?
Yeah, this is something that he has talked about, saying that while there is a priority here to pay down the debt, and that is what the tariff revenue should be used for, he says, in theory, he says that the U.S. is taking in so much money, already $100 billion from these tariffs that have been collected, that he says perhaps there could be some kind of a rebate or dividend to Americans of a certain income level. Now, they haven't specified or offered details on what that level would be, how this would work, and what amount and when. But we do also know that the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, said that he expects if the tariffs hold to the rates that they are at now, the U.S. could be taking in $300 billion a year from that. And so, again, when you talk about the debt that's in the trillions, there's a question about whether you can really have an impact there, while trying to see if this is something that could make his policies more popular. And that's why you have the president offering and floating that idea. But it hasn't been actually decided upon yet whether it will take place, Anna.
Yeah, Americans are already feeling the pinch, certainly, even at places like Dollar Tree. That discount chain's reportedly putting stickers on items now, warning that the prices for those certain items are going to go from $1.25 to $1.50. Those quarters, of course, can really add up. As the Wall Street Journal points out, however, there's not been like an economic earthquake. So, Brian, how do you square that? We don't see the markets taking a dive, but we are seeing some prices go up, and we're getting basically less for our money.
Yeah, and again, I think that this adds to the confusion here because we've been talking about the tariffs since that big Rose Garden announcement in April. And I think a lot of people have been saying, well, you know, I feel the pinch of inflation. Certainly the cost of groceries have gone up. The president claims that prices have gone down. They have not gone down. Inflation in the aggregate is still positive, which means prices are going up in this country. Now, when it comes to the actual impact of the tariffs, though, the economic data, and actually a lot of economists will agree, we have not really seen the substantial bite of tariffs in the data yet. And that is because of the on and off policy of the administration, such that really only a fraction of the tariffs that we've been talking about have actually been put into effect. Think of tariffs like, for example, those on steel and aluminum, on Canada, and also on Mexico. And some of those early China tariffs, they have been in effect for a few months. We have now started to see the impact of that dripping into the economic data, but only as of late, as of about maybe July, which means that if these tariffs that are coming into effect today stay in place for the prolonged period of time, call it 3 to 6 months, then it will be around the end of this year that you'll start to see that in the data and people will start to feel that at the store. Again, just because it went into effect in midnight doesn't mean that a 40% tariff is going to equate to a 40% increase in the price tag tomorrow. So don't go out and panic buy a bunch of goods. But again, if these stick around for long enough, those goods that are coming off of ships today end up on the store shelves in a month or 2 months from now, those will be marked up in price.
Yikes, just in time for Christmas. That's just what we need, right? All right, Brian Cheung, thank you. Thank you, Monica Alba and Ravi Agrawal as well.